Hello and welcome to the Weekend Spectator. My name is Grace Reilly and I'm here with the one and only Paul Kengor. I'm recording from Arizona right now. I'm at Turning Point's America Fest, which has been great the past few days. So looking forward to this conversation. We're going to be talking about Lee Edwards, who Paul Kengor just wrote a wonderful tribute to, who really had an important impact on conservatism and just the movement, and the conservative movement in the ways that it's helped propel our country into a brighter future. And then, in addition to that, a piece that Paul Kengor just published on 1984 and the significance of the year. Paul, it's so great to be with you.
Yeah, great and gracious Grace. It is always good to be with you. And you are recovering from a cold, so you are a real trooper right now, pushing your way through here. So if Grace has a wild coughing fit in the middle of this, it's okay. She's recovering and she's healthy. I'm here in sunny. What's bright right now, but that's because I'm at Grove City College and it is snowing like crazy. I mean, it
Really?
is. Yeah, I mean, we're truly looking at a white Christmas here. I sported my Santa Claus tie
Good, good.
for
That's
the
perfect.
occasion, and I'm at the offices of the Institute for Faith and Freedom, the Lincoln Building in Grove City, PA. And yeah, so we're going to talk today about Lee Edwards, who passed away, and we're also going to remember the year 1984, which is, I know we're at the end of 2024. And our next episode, you and I are going to look back at 2024. But I've had curious thoughts about the year 1984 when we shall get to that.
Yeah, and we will get to that. To start with Lee Edwards, so why don't you just give the audience who has never heard of him a bit of a background of his life and some of his most significant accomplishments, which I know that a lot of you, once you hear some of the things that he's behind and has been involved with, you will be familiar with those. He really has had such a significant impact on the conservative movement, and also tell people how you met and what your personal relationship was like.
You know, this is occurring to me just at this moment. Can you see his book right behind me?
Maybe.
It's
I
called
can.
Freedom's College. Well, right there.
In there
That's
somewhere, right?
okay. That's Lee Edwards' biography of William F. Buckley Jr.
Oh,
right
perfect.
there. Yeah, look at that. This was not planned. He also wrote the history of Grove City College. There it is, Freedom's College, right
Perfect.
there. And that was not planned. You'll confirm, right, that it
That's
was
just
not
how
planned.
that's how much how involved he is, right? He's everywhere and woven through so many significant things, and especially Grove City College.
Yeah, I mean, he is. I mean, ultimately, he did 25 books. Now, I didn't know some of these numbers until I visited his apartment for the first time ever in Arlington, Virginia, in August. So this would have been August of 2024, and he had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Now he's 92 years old, so you know he lived a long life, and by the way, Grace, he always looked good. I would say to his daughter Elizabeth, and he had two daughters, Elizabeth and Catherine. Elizabeth, by the way, is Elizabeth Edwards Spalding, so she's married to Matt Spalding, who runs the Hillsdale Center in Hillsdale Washington Center in D.C. And Matt, for the longest time, was at the Heritage Foundation. And I would ask Elizabeth, I would say, hey, how's your dad doing? She'd say, oh, great. And then I would see him, he'd be 88, 89, 90, 91 years old and always look good all the time. And in fact, when I saw him in August, I said, I got to be candid with you. I mean, you look really good. I, I thought you were going to look really sick. I might find you in bed. And he's like, oh, I'm fine. And Elizabeth told me, she said, no, he does a good job hiding it, but he's not feeling great. But always had all kinds of energy. He was the son of I should know his name. I should know his full name, but I believe it's Willard Lee Edwards. In fact, Lee's named for his father, and his father was the Chicago White House correspondent, Chicago Tribune, I believe. So went way back, and then Lee had this kind of conversion to conservatism and Catholicism through a number of different things that happened in his life, including being at the University of Paris or the Sorbonne. Oh, why don't I know that? I should know those details. These are things about his life I don't know that well. He was in Europe when the Hungarian Revolution broke out in 1956, and that was something that and the Soviets crushed that. And
Mhm.
that was something that really pushed Lee to anti-communism. So he becomes this leading anti-communist authority, this leading conservative. I'm getting all kinds of emails right now. Jameson Campaign, who knows us really well. I mentioned Jameson in a couple of recent articles I wrote on Richard Allen, who also died a couple of weeks ago. And Jameson said, you know where I met Lee Edwards? I met him in Sharon, Connecticut in 1960 at William F. Buckley Jr.'s house. That's where the famous
Sharon's
Sharon
great.
statement. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Grace, you know your stuff.
Yeah, guess why
Yeah,
I
that
know my stuff, because I took Paul Kengor's conservatism class at City College.
and paid attention and obviously studied and got.
Yep.
Yeah, I bet half the students in that class, if I said Sharon's statement, would have been like Sharon's.
Yeah, that's one of the
But
most significant statements in conservatism.
that's exactly right. And so he would have been. I'd have to do the math on this, but I think not even 30 years old at that point. Young Americans for Freedom, which became YAF, was started there out of that group by Buckley. Buckley and Russell Kirk also started ISI. So Lee Edwards is there for all of this. He worked for Barry Goldwater in the 1964 campaign. And then get this, Lee Edwards became the first biographer of Ronald Reagan. He interviewed Reagan, and I didn't put all of this in the tribute that I did to him, but he visited Reagan at Reagan's home in California in 1965. Now that's before Reagan even ran for governor of California. And he told me, Grace, he said, I went while I was waiting for him, I went to his bookshelf and I started pulling the books off the shelf and just flipping through them. And I saw all this handwriting by Reagan and all the books, like they call it marginalia, technically, right? Comments, thoughts, and I realized that these books weren't just like showpieces. I mean, he had actually read all of this stuff. So he writes the first book on Reagan, which was published in 1967. I want to say like May of 1967. Reagan had just been inaugurated. So Reagan wasn't even governor yet when Lee was writing that biography. Went on to write a biography of Barry Goldwater, became the was it the Distinguished Fellow in Conservative Thought at the Heritage Foundation for, I mean, decades,
Well,
probably 30 or 40 years.
even off of kind of what you said, the connection between the two of you and the things that you've done is pretty monumental as well. With him writing that first Reagan book, and obviously you are the top Reagan biographer at this point. I mean, writing a lot of different books about Reagan, but then on top of that, the communism connection because of his work there and his founding of Victims of Communism, which is a very, very great organization that does a lot of work to expose the horrors of communism and make sure that people are educated on that. And obviously, that's the other area that you've written so many books about and are an expert in.
Well, and really, in part, my being an expert on Reagan is in part a credit to him. So
Mhm.
he came to Grove City College late 1990s to do research for what became Freedom's College, which was published for 125th anniversary of Grove City College, 2001. And somebody told him, they said, "Hey, you need to interview this new professor named Paul Kengor. He's this hot shot new professor who's this is what the word that they used, who's writing all kinds of stuff. We've never had anybody here who's writing as much as he has. Rohan Senholtz would have been the other one, and he's conservative. You should meet with him, and he's interested in Reagan. So I met with him at the coffee shop in town, which today is called Beans on Broad. Back then, it was called the Coffee Grove. Great name.
Wow,
I know, isn't that a great name?
that's good
They
Grover
should have never
history.
changed the
Yeah,
name.
that's
Right,
cool.
right. They should have never changed the name. But so I met with him there and really nice guy. And I told him about the book I was envisioning on what Ronald Reagan did personally to lead to the end of the Cold War. And I'll tell you now, that book ended up being The Crusader, Ronald Reagan and the Fall of Communism. And I said, I need some money to be able to go to the Reagan Library because I want to sit there in the library and I want to see which ideas were Reagan's, what he wrote in the speeches. That's what he told me the story about pulling books off of the Reagan shelf and seeing
And
that kind of
finding
writing.
Reagan's notes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so he said, okay, here's two people that you should contact. Use my name. One is a man named B. Kenneth Simon, lives here in Pittsburgh. That's the guy that for whom the Simon Center at Heritage Foundation is named for. Use my name. So I asked him for X amount of dollars, probably 10, $15,000. I can't remember what it was. And I remember, Grace, he said something like, if you're recommended by Lee Edwards and the Heritage Foundation, you got it, son, right? And then Ken and I became good friends. I dedicated that book to Ken.
Wow.
And yeah, yeah. And that book is that right behind me too?
It is. It's up on
I think
the
it is.
top right, or it might be top left, depending on how the camera flips. It is up there.
Yeah. Wow. And then the other person he recommended, he said, the other person, this is a little foundation called, it was something like the American Historical Research Foundation. I said, I'd never heard of that. He said, yeah, it's really under the radar. It's really a kind of inside thing. And the person you need to write to there is named William F. Buckley Jr. I'm like, Buckley? And he said,
Yeah.
yeah. So keep it to yourself. Ask for this amount of money. Tell him that I recommended you. So I did. And Buckley sent me a check for it. I went to the Reagan Library. And so that whole initiative became God and Ronald Reagan, and then the Crusader. So think about this full circle. There I am at Lee's apartment in Arlington, August 2024. And he said, hey, I hear your new movie's coming out, right? And the movie's based on the Reagan book, the Crusader, which he helped me launch, right? And then I was also in town. I didn't realize this, but Eric Patterson, who runs the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, was behind the scenes planning all of this. They wanted to create a Lee Edwards honorary scholarship award through the organization he founded, Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. And Eric was working on this. They wanted me to be the first recipient. And so I ended up receiving that in September, October. I say in the article when it was. And we got a picture together. My wife Susan came down for the occasion. It's a picture of me and Sue. I'll get you the picture. Me and Susan and Lee and Eric Patterson, Elizabeth, Lee's daughter, all together there. And so at the end of the ceremony, when they honored me with this Lee Edwards Memorial Award, Lee and I talked, and he said, well, my friend, this is probably goodbye, and I'll see you again on the other side, right? And I said, I said, okay, well, when you get there, pray for me, because I'll need it. And I said, and until you get there, I'm going to pray for you every day. So I said, the Divine Mercy Chaplet and Rosary for him every day. He said a rosary every day, and then he eventually died a few months after that. And when I walked out of that building, Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, I walked out with my wife, Susan Leonora Crabata from American Spectator. And I looked down the street and I could see him in a walker, getting into his car curbside, and said, yeah, I bet that's the last time I'll see him. And it was. Although I got to tell you, he looked so good at that point that I thought, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he's slowed down, obviously, but maybe I will see him again. I don't know. But that turned out to be the last time. But
Yeah.
a great man,
Well, and
great
it,
guy.
it really was a beautiful tribute that you wrote. So it's been on your screen. So
Thank you.
make sure everyone that you go and read that more in depth. But another thing that we want to make sure that we cover as well is your piece on 1984 and just that year.
Ah,
We were laughing before this. I obviously can't add as much or relate as much to the year since I wasn't in existence. But looking back, I obviously have certain things I know about. And of course, you've got the book 1984, so I've read that. But you covered a lot of really interesting things in that piece, just spanning from I guess how you look back on the year to the different things that happened there to tying it to present day. Do you want to break down some of that?
yeah. So, I mean, 1984, the book, I mean, the year 1984 turned out to be the anti 1984 because Reagan was reelected overwhelmingly. And in that second term, went on to defeat totalitarian communism. Orwell's whole totalitarian dystopia that he wrote about was embodied in the Soviet Union. And
Well, and
so
even
that was defeated by Ronald Reagan.
yeah,
And
and even like now, as people point to the parallels and us getting closer, it almost was just defeated again, where we inched closer and closer to just, not fully, but just different things happening in our country that raised parallels to, exactly what we don't want to be happening, and things that aren't good signs with government corruption and whatnot. But again, it seems like reverse course.
Yeah, and what made me think so much about 1984 this year, 2024, is so for one thing, it was the 40th anniversary of that Reagan reelection, and a lot of people in 2024 on the conservative side were saying, "Wow, for Trump, this is like Reagan in 1984, right?" And well, I mean, it's a huge win by Trump. And electoral college, I mean, what did Trump win? 312 to 226, something like that. It was a sound win, almost 50% of the vote, if not 50. Defeated her in most states, but Reagan won 49 out of 50 states. I mean, electoral college 525 to 13, won almost 60% of the vote. So it was really just an epic election. And the other thing that had me thinking about 1984 was Donald Trump being shot in my hometown of Butler, and I graduated high school, Butler High School, in 1984. So there were so many like anniversary parallels
Yeah.
that got me thinking about that year. And I talked about that, the political parallels, and people could read that in the first few paragraphs of the article. And then I started talking about the fun stuff, right? Favorite movies,
Yeah.
favorite music, kind of sports moments. And I don't know, can you relate to any of the movies
Yeah,
or
well,
music?
even
Your
like
parents probably could. I
oh
don't know about
yeah,
you.
no, I've listened to the music, watched the movies, and I my mom all the time talks about the 80s, the hair, everything like that. Because
Right.
all of you don't know because I purposefully do it so that it's not like that, but my natural hair is actually curly. So apparently, according to my mother, I would have been perfect in the 80s and I would have been set up
Yeah.
perfectly well to be all in line with the styles, but I do make it like this on purpose instead. But that's a fun fact. So I
Well,
would
your
have been
hair's like
good
my
in the
wife's hair. Yeah. And in
Mhm.
fact, in her pictures in the 1980s, I'd give you one to put up, but she'd probably kill me. Although she was beautiful in the 1980s too. But she had big hair in
Yeah,
the in
my
in,
mom
in the
too.
1980s. Yeah, did she? Your mom did?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was and guys too. We had I should give you a picture of me from the 1980s to put up if I could find one that's not too embarrassing. But we had the kind of big hair too, right? It was
Yeah.
I mean it wasn't not like long rock star hair like that, but it was kind of up in a way. What do you even call that? I don't
I
know.
don't know, but yeah, the 80s, the styles there were something different, that's for sure.
Right, right.
Looking
Not
back,
as bad as the 70s. We looked better, I think, in the 80s and in the 70s, but
yeah, I think but I don't like the big hair. I know everyone loved that,
I
but I
don't
didn't
either.
like it. So,
I don't either. And with my wife looks back and she's embarrassed by it. And
the
it,
best thing is the 80s prom dresses, combined with
right.
hair, some crazy stuff.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I have a couple pictures of her of that. She went to at least two proms. She probably got asked every year. I don't know. Right. But I went to two. I went to my 1984 high school prom. Also went to one with a girlfriend, another girlfriend in 1986. One style from the 80s with girls. I mentioned music. It was a big year for Madonna,
Mhm.
and my wife will talk about how she and other girls were doing the Madonna look right at that time. And this was the pretty cute Madonna of songs like Borderline and Holiday before she became, lost all innocence and became the slutty, skanky
Yeah.
Madonna.
Mm.
But how do you describe that? But the kind of the baggy clothes and the jewelry and the I don't know I don't
Yeah.
know what you call it, but the
I don't
image
know, but
you could put up an image of Madonna picture. This was before the Like a Virgin tour when all of that hit, which I think must have been
she went off the rails, yeah.
she did. Yeah, it's a shame. The Madonna of '84 was still kind of very melodic, very nice music. And I mentioned in the article, 1985, she did the song "Crazy for You," which I think is her best song, and which for me brings up memories of things I shouldn't talk about, especially if my wife is watching this. In fact, I'll make sure that my wife doesn't watch this. My wife is from New Jersey. I didn't meet my wife until um, we both went to Pitt and we met as undergraduates at the Pitt News 1989.
Yeah.
So she didn't know me in the Butler years. Probably a good thing she would never
Yeah,
married me,
that's
if
what you
you
said
know me.
in your piece too. You were saying, "Oh yeah, those were the fun you had some fun in those Butler years in the 80s." Uh
Too much. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, we were really wild. And yeah, I'm lucky I graduated, and I mean,
Mhm.
we had a lot of fun for
Right,
sure,
well, you
but I'm
turned out
lucky.
okay, so
Turned out all right, by the grace of God. Yeah, I didn't end up dead or in jail.
that's good.
Probably. I mean, if there was, I was an agnostic at the time, but if there was ever affirmation of the existence of guardian angels in the divine hand, believe me, it was guiding me and protecting. But I think it was my Italian Catholic grandmother, Philomena Grace Gentili's rosaries that probably
Yeah,
saved
did
me.
it. Yeah. No, well, and hey, the Lord redeems and, we all
Yeah.
have stories like that. All of us have, fallen off the straight and narrow at one point or another, and the Lord does redeem. So,
By the way, take that full circle. If someone had come up to me and my druggy burnout friends in 1984 at a party and said, "Hey, dude, right? You're going to be like the preeminent biographer of Ronald Reagan," I'd be like, "What?" Yeah, it would have been. I probably would have just died on the spot. I
well, because
mean,
at the
there
time
could
you
have been
weren't,
nothing more inconceivable.
yeah,
It'd be
well, you
like
weren't
walking
even
up to Jeff.
interested in politics, right? At that time, it took
No, it would have
some
been like
years
walking up
later.
to Jeff Spicoli of Fast Times at Ridgemont High, right? Played by Sean Penn. It'd be like, "Oh, what, man?" Right? It would have just, I would have had a skateboard instead of a surfboard.
That's
And
funny.
it just shows how much we can change. By the way, as a teacher, and as a father of boys, right? I mean, this is one thing that I've always taken to heart with students who are struggling, and it's why I try to be merciful and easy on them, because I remember what I was like,
Mhm.
and I needed some people to pull me through,
Yeah.
because I am so different now than I was when I was 16, 17, 18 years old.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way, probably on a smaller scale maybe, but still, like I've definitely changed. I wasn't always walking with the Lord and, it honestly took going to Grove City, being on my own for the first time to
That's
really
what I needed.
realize that, to realize, oh, I haven't been walking with the Lord or living how I should. So it took that, and luckily Grove City is an amazing place that I was able to be surrounded by so many great people and just grow as a person more than anything else, more than even the academics are important, but to grow as a person in that way really was incredible. But point being, I've had my moments in life, as we all have.
But
Uh,
that's I'm saying that that's what I would have needed. But my wife and I have talked about this. I mean, she cries when she thinks, she like actually cries about how tragic it was that we got sent to a secular college and it wasn't
yeah,
what she needed. But it wouldn't have been right for me to go to Grove City at the time. In fact, because I'm from Butler, which is only 30 minutes from here, I
yeah,
had one friend, one smart friend from Butler who was also a partier and everything. And he went to Grove City College, and he used to beg us to come up and like rescue him from the dorm. So he could like literally jump out a dorm window and crawl down the roof so we could pick him up and get him out of there. We're like,
wow,
"Dude, Grove City, no way, man. That sucks. I ain't going
yeah,
up there. You can't do anything in Grove City." I remember getting a flat tire on Broad Street in Grove City, me and my friend John Anderson, and having to change the tire. But it was, according to the DP, the divine plan, right? As Reagan and Bill Clark used to put
well,
it,
and you know
I
what?
had to go through what I had to go through, I
Well, and it's
guess.
the same thing in my life, I don't all the mistakes I've made, things like that. That's what had to happen for the Lord to work through it and kind of make, beautiful things then from there. So, all of us who have kind of towed the line there, walked the path of sin, the Lord redeeming it. I mean, it had to happen in a lot of ways for us to
Right?
realize and come to God. So, and sometimes he breaks us down so that then we can get closer to him. So,
No cross, no crown,
true.
right?
Well, that's a
No
perfect
pain, no gain, no cross, no crown. A good Christmas
exactly.
message.
Yeah, a perfect
Actually,
place to
it's an
end.
Easter message too. But Fulton Sheen said that Jesus was the only person born into the world in order
Yeah. Well,
to
and
die for us.
especially as Christmas approaches this week, that's what we'll be thinking about. And we hope all of you have a Merry Christmas and are able to spend time with your families. And yeah, really a perfect note to end on. But, crazy years, the 80s. But next week, you can come back and hear about the top stories of 2024 that we've made and broken down. So we're going to be counting down the top 5 moments, but also I've added in some honorable mention stories that will kind of spice it up a little bit. So make sure that you come back next week. We hope that you have a wonderful Merry Christmas with your family and that it presents opportunities to talk about the gospel and everything else, and just that it's a wonderful week for you next week. And thank you for watching. Make sure that you share this with all of your friends. Go check out the articles mentioned in this video, and we'll see you next week.
And I would add, go to my article on remembering 1984. Go to the reader comments and put in some of your own favorite
Yeah.
memories and music and film of the day. So Merry Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas to you, Grace. Grazie, Grace. See y'all later.
Merry Christmas.